NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Woo!
Tax season is here, which means you've received or are expecting that tax refund any day now, and you're thinking about what to spend it on. How about a new home? With SaveWithConrad.com, we're helping renters become homeowners every single day, and it's more affordable than you think. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need a huge down payment. In fact, you may not need a down payment at all. At SaveWithConrad.com, we take the stress out of the home buying process. We'll determine your buying power. We'll even help you find a realtor. And unlike the banks, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. So if you're not ready right now, we'll get you on a plan to be ready. Stop throwing your money away, paying someone else's mortgage with your rent, and start the path towards owning your own home today at SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm trying to get this bottle open. I don't think I'm doing anything crazy.
Hopefully you're watching with us over on YouTube, Grilling JR on YouTube.com. I appreciate the disclaimer there. There we go. A little water break Jones to get the show started.
Water break Jones.
Maybe he's a little parched. Maybe it's because it's 420. Maybe it's because our subject today is Mr. Rob Van Dam. But before we talk about that, we've had a little fun talking about your Sunday night routine, catching up on all things A&E. Yep. What'd you think about last week's presentation?
I liked the Iron Sheik biography. You know, I've known Cosgrove for the majority of my career. I met him in my store in Westville, Oklahoma. He and Hodge dropped by, and he was smaller there than the folks that are watching us on YouTube. He was smaller then than he was in this picture here. When I met him, Cosgrove didn't drink, and he didn't smoke. He traveled with Hodge, who didn't drink, he rarely drank, and Hodge had a sweet tooth, as I've discussed. He liked those sweet drinks, you know, the ones that have umbrellas in them and shit like that.
There you go.
But Hodge never smoked, so he was a great role model for Cowboy and Leroy McGurk to put Cosgrove with. And but he was shy, understated. He was not nearly like the guy that we have seen in future years. But he was such a sweetheart of a guy. I think he still is. He's entertaining as hell. He gets your heartstrings with his life that he's led. It's been tough. Losing a daughter to murder. She was a beautiful young woman. Was just, shattering. It broke his heart. And he didn't rebound from it well. But how do we all know how any of us would rebound in something like that?
Yeah.
It's a horrific tragedy that you can't prepare your mind and body for. So I thought they did a nice job with it. They captured his journey very well. He had that. People think that his run in WWE ended when he dropped the belt to Hogan.
Not true.
Well, it didn't. Yeah, hell no. He had that run with Sergeant Slaughter. I think he had a run with Duggan, and that's where they get popped for their getting stopped by the cops. And I think in Jersey or somewhere. I'm not sure, but it was bad timing, fellas. So, and they were booked against each other that night. And you just don't do that. And that's for two veterans should know better.
Right.
They should know better. So anyhow, all's well that ends well. Everybody's doing okay now, it seems like. But I enjoyed I would recommend watching the Iron Sheik biography, quite frankly, if you're a fan, and it takes you back to a different generation. Some great pictures and some amazing sound bites from Sheik himself and his family. So it's got somebody put a lot of people probably put a lot of work into it. You can tell it's really good. So check it out. I'm enjoying those Sunday nights, to be honest with you. I think they're kind of cool. It gives you, when Deadwood comes back, I don't know how it's going to do, because I know I'm going to watch Deadwood.
Wait, Deadwood's coming back?
Not Deadwood, Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, oh my God, how did I miss that? I was fired up for a minute.
Yeah, me too. One of my favorites.
Hey, have
You
you
know,
had a chance to catch the HBO show Succession?
no, you asked me that, and I have not, but I'm curious.
It's sort of loosely inspired by the Murdoch family, but wrestling fans can't help but draw some parallels with the McMahon family. And I wanted to get your take on it. But when you catch it up one day, I'm
I
sure
will.
we'll have a discussion on it. But before we talk about our subject today, Mr. Rob Van Dam, want to remind everybody that Dynamite was in Pittsburgh last night, but Rampage from Pittsburgh will be airing this Friday night. And of course, that's where you'll be able to catch the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. And
Rampage.
yeah, how about that? We got Baltimore, Detroit, Austin, Texas, a lot of places AEW is going to be before they land in Las Vegas for Double or Nothing Memorial Day weekend, including an upcoming debut in San Diego, a return to Chicago. Lots of rumors about that Forbidden Door show and the Wembley show. My goodness, this is going to be quite the stretch for AEW over the next 6 months or so, is it
We're
not?
going to be, yeah, exactly. We're going to be very busy. And you got to pay special attention to one's travel. I manage that stuff, man. I sit in too many middle seats or sit where I didn't want to sit. I got my routine now is that if I get in the bulkhead aisle at first class, that's my spot because I can stretch my legs out a little bit and it takes a lot of relief off my ankle. And so that's my goal is, but I stay ahead of it. When the flight's booked, I select seats right away that day. Then, so there's going to be a lot of travel. I don't know. I'm not booked in England as I know. I figure I'll go. I want to go, but I don't know. I haven't. It hasn't been confirmed. Nothing's been confirmed. It's just not
Right.
Jr. And I don't know. Uh, I don't have any. Are tickets on sale?
No, they're not yet. They go on sale early May, and
Okay.
from what I understand, there's been over 50,000 requests. So you got to imagine that those 50,000 folks who are looking to get a reservation for tickets, they're not looking to buy one ticket. You know, the BHAG, the big hairy ambitious goal is 91,000 folks. That's a
Golly,
lot of folks. I mean, I don't even know with staging and production and all that if that's possible, but
I don't
the
either.
idea that AEW is going to run a doggone stadium show, and it
Yeah.
feels like a lock at this point that there's going to be 50,000 folks or better there. This is going to be wrestling history. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah, we hyperbole the greatest of all time and history and all these things. This really is a historic event
Yes.
for a little company like AEW to grow as exponentially quick as they have, as we have, because I've been there since day one, is quite the testament to Tony Khan's intestinal fortitude,
Yes.
or testicular fortitude. Maybe that
Whatever
too.
you prefer.
All of it, all the fortitudes, because that's a hell of a risk. That's going to be a big nut to produce that show. It's going to cost a lot of money, but what you would understand, and it would be expected. So I'm anxious to see how we end up doing, and I hope that I'm there. I'd love to broadcast from Wembley Stadium. I haven't never done that, so that'd be a first in my near 50-year career. Be
Wow.
50 years next year, Conrad. Can you fucking believe that?
That's amazing.
It is. Hope I make it past that 50 mark.
Oh,
So,
of course you will. Come on now.
and then Paul O'Brien and I worked on the book this weekend, which is kind of an interesting process. Thank God for cell phones and speaker phones, because we had a long meeting, and he does a great job, and he'll have a list of questions in topics for me to address, so he's organized. We don't start with a blank page,
Right.
so it helps me a lot in that recalling and things of that nature. So it's come along real well. Still on target. We're still on time, as they say. So it's good. And this good publisher. The head honcho is going to edit our book, and she is not a wrestling fan.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to try to explain things. Let her so we can help her understand this wacky business. And Conrad, I mentioned this to Paul over the weekend. Tell me what your thoughts are. I said our target audience has got to be the hardcore fan.
Yes.
I don't think a casual fan buys a lot of wrestling books. I might be wrong. Now, we've sold a lot of books. We've done real well. But I think if we cater to the hardcore fan in our marketing and in our writing, uh, that we will do fine. It's a very unique book. It's just the 50 greatest calls that I've been privileged to be a part of, and stories around them. So it has a lot of short chapters. It's a quick read. It's one of those reads where you could take it to the can and set it aside, and then next time you visit, read a chapter or two. So it's a fun project. Instead of keeping me busy, which is what I like doing, is staying busy. So anyway, things are good in my world, I
I
think.
want to quickly mention. I told you when I read it that I think your second book is one of the best books ever on wrestling, and I think one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much is because it was tailored to the hardcore fan. And my personal opinion is that some of the books that maybe try to have a mass appeal, they miss the mark.
Yeah,
Because sometimes the mass at large, the quote unquote general public, non wrestling fans, it's going to be a hard sell to get them to read a quote unquote wrestling book. Whereas
right,
if a
right,
hardcore fan reads it and it's like, well, this is just filler, no new information.
right.
Your second book was not like that. Your second book was filled with great stories that we'd never heard before and some insights into what it was like for working for Vince McMahon and all that, that really we haven't seen anywhere else. So I can't recommend your second book enough. Can't wait to see the third one.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to talk about Rob Van Dam today. I can't believe that we haven't done a show on Rob yet, because I think he's one of my favorite performers of all time. I mean,
Me too. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. As a guy, just to hang and shoot the shit with, hang out
yeah,
with. I've always enjoyed that with Robbie, and I enjoyed when he was on our roster. He was a different breed of cat. Everybody's got to be managed in ways that will positively affect them. And with Rob, I think his issue was just like a lot of the boys, uh, trust and and you know just making sure that he felt comfortable, because he was a hell of a hand. Golly, he did things then that guys do now, and I don't know if they may not even know that he influenced them. I hope
right.
they do, because he was very innovative, and for that I always have admired Rob Van Dam.
Why do you think when people talk about the all-time greats, very rarely do we hear his name? Is it because of his ECW background? Is it because of his relationship with marijuana? I don't know. Like you often hear people talk about Chris Jericho as being one of the all-time greats, and I'm not just saying what we've been saying for 20 years about Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat and Shawn Michaels, but it feels like Van Dam should be in that conversation somewhere, but you almost never hear
Yeah,
that name, and I don't really understand why that is.
it's unfortunate. I'm not sure I have the right answer. I would say the marijuana thing has had something to do with it. Uh, it never affected my opinion of Rob.
Right.
But that's, unfortunately, instead of being known for his high flying, his 5-star frog splashes, Van Daminators, and all those things that we grew to like and love. Uh, he he's just was so different, and that's the thing about talents today. They have to figure out, how can I be different
Yes.
and still be effective, and he figured it out. So I was really privileged to have him on our roster. I think he was a great asset to the team. And I don't know, Conrad, do you ever remember him having a real bad match?
I don't. I mean, I'm sure there probably had to be one, right, out of all of
Yeah,
them, but
you'd think.
I couldn't call one off the top of my head. And I
Me
think in
neither.
'97, when he was really coming into his own as a character on ECW programming, towards the end of the year, I was convinced that the dream match that wrestling fans needed to see was that era Shawn Michaels versus that era Rob Van Dam. We didn't get it, but of course, we know Van Dam did have quite the run in the WWE, and we're going to talk about all that. And in fact, his first time being on WWE programming was way back when.
Yeah.
He was the kid who was involved in a skit with $1 Million Man to kiss his foot for $100 at a TV taping. Who would have known? What a nice little footnote in history that is. That Rob Van Dam was at that show as a young man and collecting $100. How about that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's a interesting story. And I've talked to him about that. He's just a big fan.
Yeah,
A kid going to the wrestling matches, going to watch WWE at that time. And he was, randomly selected because he had what they wanted to portray on television as a stereotypical fan.
right.
Good looking young white kid, to be honest. And so he was, that was an interesting way to make your debut, shall we say. Who would have thunk it that he would go on and become one of the best, most well known, highly skilled talents that we've all ever seen.
Well, we know that eventually he's going to let the original Sheik train him. Did you ever meet Ed?
Yeah.
What do you know about the original Sheik? What was your relationship like with him?
Well, it was just business. When I saw him, I always gave him great respect, which he loved. Who doesn't? And he built a hell of a business in that Detroit area. With limited television and he had his territory there, and it did pretty good. It was all built around him, which is fine. I asked Bill Watts one time. I said, "Why do bookers put themselves on these main events?" He said, "Because we can trust ourselves. Sometimes you can't trust the other guys."
There you go.
So that was logical. So I think Sheik was kind of the same way. He wanted to control his own destiny and sail his own ship, and he did that by working with guys like Bobo Brazil, who was in and out of there forever.
Right.
Guys like that he liked, and they delivered. So, but he was an interesting man. I think a lot of those old school guys, as I recall, were cautious.
Yeah.
They didn't run into something. You had to prove yourself to some degree. That the same thing with my relationship with Roddy Piper. And I watched the Piper Hogan documentary too, and that was really good. That was last night, or as we're recording this, Sunday night. So it was, and that was a good one, as I said. So two good ones to check out: Piper and Iron Sheik, especially. But it was good. Hogan was on a lot. I'm surprised they got him to sit still long enough to do as much gathering of information as they have. It was pretty ambitious, shall we say.
Well, I think you run across Rob Van Dam long before you see him on ECW or hire him over with the WWF. You're actually calling his debut match for WCW Saturday Night in January of 1993 against friend of the show, Pat Rose.
Huh.
It's not necessarily a memorable debut, but there you are. You're the man on the call. Will this have been the first time you remember meeting Rob Van Dam?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. He was in there with a good hand. Pat Rose is a good, I don't know how you say it politely, a enhancement type guy. Pat had a real good basic skill set, so he could work with a young guy like Rob Van Dam and help him move the needle forward. So, but he was solid and he looked good. I'm speaking of Rob. I think looking good was probably one of Pat Rose's downfalls. He didn't have that main event wrestler body that was stereotypically used, but he was a hell of a hand. So, and I didn't know that, Conrad. I didn't know that. I forgot about Rob and WCW Saturday Night. I really did. But the picture brought back memories. That's why I love YouTube. I hope folks will take advantage of our YouTube channel because we have a lot of fun stuff there, great images and visuals and videos and all this stuff. It's just a great trip down the right lane.
Yeah, check it out. Grilling JR on youtube.com. Of course, he's not long for WCW. He's going to start working indies and make quite a few appearances for All Japan for a few years. Then he shows up in ECW in January of 96. And boy, he makes an impression on this audience with this unique style of offense in a hurry. Are you monitoring ECW in 96, or when does that really land on your radar as somebody helping with talent relations?
Well, I was on they're on my radar, no doubt, because I had access to the channel. I think they were on MSG at that time. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think they're on the MSG network, and I got that on my cable package. So, uh, you know, I, I just, I, Rob was just such a unique guy. And of course, I was close and still am with Paul Heyman. And I was pulling for him. It's his
Right.
company.
Yeah.
He had a lot of family money invested in it. And I knew how hard it was to be in charge of a territory. I've been around enough guys that taught me a lot, and I felt like I had a feel for it. And so I was always following Paul in his corner. Still am to this very day. If I watch a WWE program, I hope that I'm watching one that has Heyman on it, because to me he's the difference maker in making good TV or making great TV for the segments that he's involved in. So yeah, I did pay attention, and a lot of those guys that I ended up hiring were because I first saw them and I got a taste of their efforts and their work on the ECW TV show. And I didn't even know I was going to be in talent relations at that point in time. Just the fact that I got familiar with the talent, and I liked how Paul booked. So it's a Wild West show. I enjoy Wild West.
Well, we should also mention that he's not a part of the original ECW invasion, which I guess happened at the September pay per view in Philadelphia Mind Games, or when they invade the Manhattan Center in February of 97. And that actually leads to a little bit of controversy around ECW's very first pay per view, Barely Legal, which happened in April of 97. The rumor and innuendo at the time is that Rob had been talking with WCW about joining with Eric Bischoff's company. And I guess maybe he was in his feelings about being left off of the card. Maybe some of that storyline, maybe some of it's not, but he starts to market himself as Mr. Monday Night.
Yeah.
When do you remember having initial conversations with Rob about working with WWE? Would that have been after ECW was done or before?
Well, I didn't tamper with the contract. I didn't want to screw around Paul or Rob. You don't want to cultivate someone's bad habits. He was going to fulfill his obligations, but I was very interested in hiring him in '97, and just had to work things out. And he was in a heavy program there at ECW, so he needed to finish that, and we didn't need to put Paul in a bind. Sometimes the booker realizes this talent is going to leave,
Right.
and so we have to take that into uh, accordance. It's going to happen. And so, do you want him to come to you, or you want him to go to someplace else? And of course, WCW is out there, and but I want to make sure we got Rob on our roster at some point, and we finally did.
We've often heard that there was some sort of an arrangement between ECW and WWE. Of course, there was some financial support coming from Vince on a monthly basis, as I understand it, and occasionally you would see talent from the WWE be sent down to ECW, whether it was a Brockus or a Aldo Montoya or an Al Snow or what have you.
Yeah.
What was the relationship as far as how did the talent work? Like if someone was interested in moving on, did that all need to always go through ECW? I mean, you wouldn't support them going around Paul, I'm sure.
No.
So I'm just curious, do you think that's why maybe in 97 more of that talent went to WCW because they felt like they couldn't go through Paul to get to you guys? So maybe the Ravens and the Stevie Richards and the Mikey Whipwrecks and Sandmans and all those guys went the WCW route just because it was the path of least resistance?
They might have. They might have. That's a good point, Conrad. They might have, no doubt. But all those guys you mentioned were guys that I didn't jump through hoops to hire.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I want at the end of as the ECW brand matured, I wanted the Dudleys. I wanted Dreamer, and I sure as hell wanted Rob Van Dam, among other guys. So yeah, that was on there. I had a small list of ECW guy Taz. I wanted to sign Taz, And we did. All those guys we got. And it just took a process and time and patience. And I didn't want to, and I was not going to do anything that would be new information to Paul Heyman.
Right.
It's just out of professional courtesy and the way you do business, the right thing to do is say, hey, look, we're interested in hiring Rob Van Dam, for example, for the sake of this story. And how can we make that happen? You know, so when can you allow him to exit? Because I didn't want him to exit and then go back. So we got one more angle. We thought of one more thing he can do. I didn't want one more thing. I want you to finish it the way you want to finish it. And the finish is that. It's the finish. And then we get him and he'll be with us full time. So that's kind of, those kind of conversations I had with Paul. He understood, Did he like it? Probably not. He's getting ready to lose a big star. But at least it was communicated to him in a professional way so that he didn't get stabbed in the back on any of these transactions.
Right. So listen, let's talk about the debut here. It happens in Newark, Delaware, about a month after the ECW pay-per-view Barely Legal, May 12th, 1997. We're going to put Rob Van Dam, give him mic time and a win on Monday Night Raw. And his win takes 2 minutes and 28 seconds over Jeff Hardy, which is fascinating because about 4 years later, they're going to absolutely tear it up. But we see a very young Jeff Hardy here doing the favors for Rob Van Dam, who gets the win with a split-legged moonsault, which is something I don't think anybody watching WWE TV had ever seen before.
Right.
He does a great pre-match interview with Jerry Lawler, where he's basically agreeing with Lawler that, yeah, everybody in ECW is a minor leaguer except me. I'm Mr. Monday Night. The association with Lawler in hindsight maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, but you had to be there because he was on TV every week ridiculing ECW, making fun of ECW, and it's to set up a pay-per-view match with himself and Tommy Dreamer on an ECW show. Man, is there anybody better than Jerry Lawler on the mic trying to get heat? Goodness gracious.
No, there's not. Lawler is in my top 3 all-time, all-around wrestling talents.
Yes.
The only other guy that I would put into that category based on the fact that their skill set let them become a main event wrestler. He could manage. He could broadcast. He could do everything. He could be a baby face or he could be a heel, both at high level main event status. So Jerry was just and the other guy that's in that same conversation is Bobby Heenan. Go back and do the research on Bobby Heenan. For some of you fans already know it. He was a hell of a heel. He was a great in-ring worker. And he managed, as we all know. And he broadcast, as we all know. So he and Lawler checked a lot of the same boxes. Yeah. And both with equal success. And so, yeah, Lawler's the right place, right time, and he did his job for this thing. He wasn't a big, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Lawler just wanted to do business.
Right.
He wasn't a big ECW fan. As a matter of fact, he was one of their big, adversaries.
Yeah.
Protagonists or antagonists rather.
All that.
Yeah, all those things, all those antagonists. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, Lawler's perfect, and he did a good job in that whole ordeal. Look, it got Lawler TV time.
Yes,
he's a veteran. The more TV time you can get, the better off you are. So anyway, he was great. He helped us a whole lot in that telling that story.
Fite Plus is the ultimate digital platform for live sports and entertainment, and they're now offering a free 7-day trial at tryfite.com. Fite Plus is packed with a premium live event schedule, over 1,000 hours of live action every year, and a library of more than 4,000 hours on demand, plus exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. Fite is a great partner of ours. They support us, so let's support them. Give that free 7-day trial a shot, and you'll be a member for life. That's tryfite.com. TRYFITE.com. Well, this angle is going to get hot. It's going to make Van Dam really the talk of the wrestling world. I mean, here's a guy who's under contract to ECW wrestling on Monday Night Raw. You had to be there, but at the time, this was the first time anything like this had happened. There was no forbidden door back then. And the Observer would report that Bruce Pritchard and Paul Heyman were working closely together to pull all this together. Did you think in the end this would result in Rob being on the WWE program, or did you know, hey, we're just trying to, help a brother out on some ECW pay-per-views, but he's going to stick around there?
No, I wanted to hire him.
Yeah.
In the story. I want him on our roster full time. Fresh face, innovative, as I said, probably redundantly already this morning. So, and Paul and Bruce are buddies, same as Paul and myself, Bruce and myself. And so Bruce had that was his big project, to address the RVD ECW ongoing story. And at the end of the day, we got our guy. That's what you look at. Did you get your guy that you wanted? Yes, we did. And damn glad of it.
Well, we should mention that he gets to work against Flash Funk, the former Too Cold Scorpio, who he knew from ECW, and even teams with Lawler in a couple of matches against the Headbangers. But then in June, just after he's been here for a month and change or so, as the story goes, he walked out because he didn't want to put over the road dog, Jesse James. Now, this is before he's a part of the New Age Outlaws, and this is before he really takes off and becomes what he became with DX. At this point, man, the roadie was not exactly top of the cards. So when he takes an old school approach, like maybe the Sheik, his trainer, would have taught him, and says, nope, we're not doing that, he's out of here. What do you remember of that?
Awkward, unfortunate. I thought he got bad advice. Here's the deal. Should he have put Road Dogg over? If that's what the booker wanted, yeah. It's the right thing to do. I could argue that point.
Right.
But I sure as hell would have stayed on my post and done my work. And that's just how Rob was raised. I'm sure that Eddie Farhat's influences had a bearing on that decision that Rob was making. I just don't believe in the worst excuse or reason, better said. I don't think it's cool when you don't want to finish the project, even though it may not be what you want to do. You're still getting paid, and go out there and steal the show and turn heads again and move up the card. But you can't do it if you're not there. You got to have a jersey to play. Don't turn your jersey in.
Well said. Here's a quote from Rob Van Dam about that. I walked out on them in 97 during that invasion angle because I was there for the betterment of ECW. And that's what Sabu and I thought. And Vince thought I was there for a different reason. And Paul kept us in the dark about that. He told us the whole time, if there's anything you don't like, just say the word, we'll go, we'll walk. And it came to a point where we're there to put ECW on the map on their TV. Well, he did mean it. He wanted us to get heat with WWE so he could keep us. That's the way Paul was. And I told him, dude, they want me to put over Armstrong, Brian Armstrong. What's that going to do for ECW? So I got to a point where I'm like, Paul, what should we do? And instead of giving me advice, he replied, what do you want to do? If you want to go, just say the word. He put it all on me. And yeah, I can't come in and do the JOB. And they had been doing that. So it forced a meeting with Vince. Myself, Sabu, and Vince, and I don't know, Jerry Briscoe was there, I think. Pritchard and Paul were in the corner talking to each other, not even paying attention to the meeting. And that's where I learned from Vince that he would have never put me on TV if he didn't think I was going to stay with WWE. And he was going to put me in an aggressive babyface role. And I was like, what? Like, I had no idea this was the plan. And apparently Paul, he did know. So that's why he blew that up. And then I was there for ECW. And it was like, we've got to go. And boom, we left. This is a story that I don't think a lot of people know about. They've all heard, what the Observer printed, which was, hey, he didn't want to put over Armstrong and he walked out. But that's not the whole story.
No,
Yeah.
no. Communication is such an important part of our lives, whether you're in the wrestling business or not. You know, I think it's just hard to it's just hard to do business with people that are not forthcoming.
Right.
And I think we had a little issue there. Everybody involved in the equation wasn't forthcoming. Hey, here's what we wanted. We wanted to hire Rob Van Dam to wrestle for WWE full time,
Right.
full time, and simple as that. Then all of a sudden, all these other outside influences start, adding some seasoning to the soup, and it gets over seasoned. So we're talking about soup here. We're talking about booking a wrestler to come in, and Vince liked Rob. We all like Rob. It's hard not to like the guy, but I think in that during that point in time, he might have been considered as a little bit of high maintenance just based on his background and his indoctrination into the business. And again, being influenced by one of the great stars of all time, and the original Sheik, that's a possibility. Sheik, I'm sure, gave him advice not to do the honors
Right.
on this situation. I'm guessing. I don't know that. And but I think anytime that you're booked and you're accepting pay for your job, how you're cast, or in other words, how you're booked, should not be a reason to walk off your post. I just don't believe in that.
Listen, we often say on this podcast, in business and certainly in entertainment and wrestling, it's just all of life. Timing is everything. Do you think Vince would have known what to do with Rob Van Dam? Like, would his career have worked out the way he would have hoped had he made this jump here in the summer of 97? I mean, at this point, we've not yet fully embraced attitude, is where I'm trying to get to. And I do think that eventually the style of wrestling is going to change, and certainly the presentation with the characters and the language and the content within, all that's going to change, but it hasn't yet by the summer of 97.
Right.
So in a weird way, do you think maybe it worked out the way it was supposed to?
I think it did. I think it did
Yeah.
work out the way it's supposed to. Our original plan was sidetracked.
Right.
So okay, so you adjust. You still, here's the deal. You got to do what you got to do, Conrad, to get the order. And if that meant waiting or taking a timeout, so to speak, then take it. The end of the day is I want to sign this guy. I need to sign this guy. It became, I don't want to say an obsession, but it was a very high priority for me because I thought he could add something to our locker room, and more specifically in the ring, that we could not replicate, at least easily, because his style was so unique. And but again, I never took my eye off the prize. My deal was I want to sign Rob Van Dam to a WWE contract, and I want to see him every week. So that's kind of where I always stood, the same spot. If you want to address it, I'll be standing right here. Same spot, same theory, same goal.
Well, we know that Rob's brief run in the WWF is going to be enough to elevate him up the card in ECW. He's going to be going from a top level heel, and then a babyface turn makes him the guy in ECW. He has a 2-year title reign with the ECW television title that really puts it over the top. And he never actually won the ECW title. As I understand it, he wound up, I think he broke his leg, and he's on the shelf before the company starts to fall into a state of disarray, I suppose. And here's a quote from you in early 2001 when ECW is knocking at death's door. This is a quote from good old JR. "We have not signed Van Dam. I've had one conversation with his agent, one. That was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I told him at the time we had mild interest, and if they had better offers, I didn't want them to think there was a deal here waiting on them that was going to prevent Van Dam from signing with a company somewhere else. He's not a high priority for us right now.
I was lying.
Listen, you don't want to compete against yourself. You're going to have to
Yeah.
talk dollars eventually. So if you say, "Oh, we can't wait to get him," you lose your leverage, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We've not offered him a contract. We've not talked money. We have not signed him, obviously, and we will not sign him until we have the opportunity to meet in person, and that would be based on their schedule and my schedule. I love that you're just able to be honest here and say, "Nope, I was lying. We wanted him, but
Of course he did.
What do
The
you-
matter is, it's the art of negotiation, Conrad.
absolutely
You don't want to ever negotiate against yourself.
no."
You know, I had a guy the other day call me, wanted me to do a appearance. I told you I was going to try to do more appearances, and here, there, and yon, and because I like them, and it gets me out of the house, gives me something to do on the weekend, when we don't have a pay-per-view or something along those lines. But I just, yeah, you got to be smart in how you negotiate.
Right.
You know, the company wide, Rob may not have been a high priority. In my eyes, as someone who has continued to build the talent roster, he was a damn high priority. But I went along with the company line and what Vince wanted to, how Vince wanted to approach this thing. So, yeah, it was just tough. It was tough to swallow hold your tongue, shall we say. So, but instead we had to kind of tell a little white lie. And I didn't like doing that, but because he was a big priority, as I said, I can't explain enough. I wanted him on the roster. I thought he would invigorate. I thought he would sensationalize. I thought he would be doing jaw-dropping things that nobody else was replicating to any semblance of that. So this was an interesting negotiation. It seemed like it took forever, and that's what bothered me, because that wasn't the only project, Conrad, that I was working on.
Right.
You got over 100 wrestlers, and they got over 100 issues. Every day, there's something. They need to get pay advances. They haven't paid their taxes. I had a guy one time that was making 7 figures a year, and he I didn't know, was unaware. How would I know? He didn't pay his taxes, and he hadn't paid his taxes in 2 or 3 years apparently. Making a lot of money. You know, we talked about last week. You know, $1 million a year is 19,000 a week.
Right.
That's a lot of cash.
Yes, it is.
So, and you get it every week without fail, and the checks clear the bank. There's no waiting, or you know, they're lost in the mail or else of that bullshit. So, you know, I don't know. I get a loss for words and some of this stuff. It just seemed like that negotiation took much longer than it should have. Again, too many cooks in the kitchen would be my explanation.
Was there any hesitation on Vince's part because of this circumstance in '97 where he didn't put over Armstrong? And clearly, we know now it was Rob didn't have all the information, but I don't think maybe you guys even knew that at that point. Was there any hesitation on Vince's part, as best you can recall?
Not really. You know, he after a while with me in talent relations, Vince started trusting me. We had a lot of successes. We had a run there. We hired some amazing talents that are all Hall of Fame level guys, millionaires today, Hall of Fame type people. So he, when I went to him, it was like I had the right answers. And here's the deal, man. You don't get married forever. It's not like a real marriage. I you know, if things didn't work out, then we say goodbye.
Right.
Simple as that, really. It's not any more difficult than that. If you're going to play on the team, then you need to be able to contribute. And I knew Rob could contribute. It's just all the other ancillary things in that little orbit around him that was a concern.
Let's continue with some of your quotes here, because at the time you said no one can ever deny that he has outstanding in-ring skills. It's just the fact that because of the perception of his attitude, perception being the key word, We really need to address our concerns with him in person, and he needs to be given the opportunity to explain his point of view on this perception. The perception may be wrong, but until we can have the chance to sit down and talk with him face to face and give him the opportunity to express himself, we're pretty much where we are. So clearly, you're pushing for an in-person meeting. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You said, you remember these negotiations being more difficult than they should have been.
Well, in the respect, Conrad, of being long, we should have got this deal done months before. But again, under normal circumstances, to be honest with you, we would have had it done. But this wasn't normal circumstances.
Was his agent making it more difficult than it needed to be?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't even remember who his agent was.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. And so apparently he wasn't such a big pain in the ass. I got his memory, branded to my ass. I don't recall that being an issue. The issue was just getting Rob to sit down with us.
Right.
Sit down with me and go from there. I needed to be able to have a meeting with Rob Van Dam where I could subsequently go to Vince and say, we just had a great meeting. I think you're going to like this kid. He's a little bit of a rebel. He's a little anti-defiant, but it seems like where we're headed with our overall roster and creative, he'd fit right in. And I have the utmost confidence that he can contribute in a big way here on a main event level. And that's what I wanted to be able to go tell Vince after that meeting with Rob is here's where we are. So I was dogged. I was like a commissioned salesperson. I wasn't going to get a bonus for signing Rob Van Dam, but I acted like it.
I love that. Well, listen, we know as the rumor goes, you had a meeting with Rob in LA in April of 2001. This would have been right after ECW has collapsed, right after the WCW purchase happens. Do you remember this meeting with Rob in LA?
I remember having it, but all the specifics of it, Conrad, we're talking
22 years ago.
Yeah. I don't remember it being a bad meeting. You remember that, unfortunately, in our lives, especially in wrestling, the negative news always gets above the title, designation. But I don't remember anything negative about it. I don't know. I don't know if did we get our deal done that day or another day? Do you know?
I don't know all the details, but I do know that the invasion goes to shit after Buff and Booker, and it's just not exactly what we were hoping for in Tacoma. And as I understand it, that's when Rob debuts as a part of the original ECW invasion with Tommy Dreamer. Eventually, we know the alliance is formed between WCW and ECW. So that really happened. That invasion pay-per-view was in July. So that summer, it starts to heat up. So if you didn't close the deal in April, you got real close.
Yeah. That only counts as hand grenades and horseshoes.
Yeah.
I want to get this signed and get my guy signed. Get him in front of us. Put him on television and turn him loose. Let him run like a wild horse that he is out there a cowboy told me that one time. I said, how do you manage all these guys? He said, well, you got to understand they're wild horses.
Right.
And you got to let wild horses run. So, okay. So I've kind of used that over the years. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but I understand they have their free spirits and they're usually alpha males. They're usually highly motivated. So in any event, it was a challenging time. But I remember the LA meeting. He was living out there, I think, at that time. And then we were out there for a show. So it worked out.
I'll tell you what, his pay-per-view debut against Jeff Hardy still stands the test of time. A really fantastic match. Go watch it. Invasion. It's for the Hardcore Championship. You want to talk about making a splash?
Wow, look at that.
Here with this audience. This does it. And how ironic that it's the same guy he had his very first match in the WWF ring with, Jeff Hardy. That happens in July and then again in August at SummerSlam. Maybe Jeff Hardy was the perfect opponent for Rob.
I don't know if he was a perfect opponent. I don't know. I can't quantify that. I know they had a hell of a match.
Yeah, they did.
And they had everything in that match that I envisioned we would have when we got Rob signed. He's just a big time player. And I'm not so sure that even today, I saw a picture of him on social media the day. He said he had eliminated sugar from his diet, which is a great idea. I need to think about that myself. At least I'm buying sugar-free Snapple.
There you go.
I mix Metamucil in a bottle of Snapple and shake it up. I know you're supposed to put it in a liquid, but it didn't say it has to be water.
I love you for that. I don't know what I expected to talk about today, but Metamucil in a sugar-free Snapple, that's going to get my week started right.
Yeah, man, and helps your digestive tract. We do a lot of things in this show for our aging digestive tracts.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, I'm getting down the wrong hole with the
No, you know
hole.
what? Since we're here, we might as well talk about it. You and I love starting our day every day with AG1. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. Maybe you don't have time to take all these different supplements. Maybe you want better gut health. Maybe you want more energy. Maybe you want to optimize your immune system. Maybe you want a supplement that, actually tastes good. Well, AG1 checks all the boxes. With one delicious scoop, man, you're getting 75 high quality vitamins, all your minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, everything you need to help you start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your focus, your recovery, your aging, all of the things. You don't have to take mine and JR's word for it. These folks have over 7,000 5-star reviews, and it's lifestyle friendly. Whether you're trying to do keto or paleo, or maybe you're vegan or dairy or gluten-free, AG1's still for you. There's no sugar. There's less than 1 gram of sugar. Less than 1 gram of sugar. No GMOs, no nasty chemicals, no artificial anything. And y'all, it still tastes good. It's going to support better sleep quality and recovery, better mental clarity and alertness. Think of it as like your all-in-one nutritional insurance. And right now, we think it's time you reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. 1 scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/JR. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/JR to take over ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. That's athleticgreens.com/JR. So, Jim, the whole alliance is pushed as the heel invaders, but somehow Rob Van Dam's babyface pops are noticeable right from the beginning.
Oh, they are, right?
The crowd is with him right away. I know you're probably not surprised by that. You've been chasing him for a while. Was anybody in the back surprised by that? Was Vince or anybody else surprised?
Oh, I'm sure they were. Yeah, I'm sure they were. But Rob has that innate ability, and he still does. I'm thinking, I was going to say, on a one-off, could he go out and have a great match with somebody that skill set matched up? Hell yeah, he could today.
Yes,
today. But he always had the amazing ability to connect with the audience. And, no matter what we think, a televised pro wrestling event is, you're in a studio.
Right.
Sometimes they're big studios. When we go to the UK, that's a big studio at Wembley Stadium. But it's a television studio, and for the lack of a better term, because the television show is emanating from there. To me, that's a television studio. When we were at Daly's place, studio. When we're on the road, studio. We're in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was just last night as this drops, and so it's just that's what they are, and but he could command that audience very well. For some, I don't know if it was the gleam in his eye or his body English or just his demeanor. Something connected Van Dam with the live audience as well and as quickly as anybody I've ever seen.
Well said. Why do you think the crowd gravitated to him from day one? I mean, for a long time, we've heard people like Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff say that this ECW audience was a niche audience. It was a small audience. It wasn't enough to support their small company. Blah blah blah. But when he shows up here on the big show, the WWE show, he's getting big reactions right away. So there is some familiarity there. How do you reconcile that? That, well, it's tiny and they don't have a big audience, but boy, these crowds are popping for him.
Well, they had a bigger audience than we wanted to admit that they had.
Okay.
Quite frankly, and that audience was very loyal. They were very vocal. And if you're an ECW fan and you saw RVD doing well, that means a guy from formerly from your team is succeeding, and that's a good thing. So that's kind of how I see that thing. You know, we had a really it was surprising to a lot of guys. I was mildly surprised. I thought he would get a babyface reaction because people simply like the son of a gun, but he, you know, it just was amazing to me that he connected with the audience that quickly, that fervently. It was real. It was real. And that's because RVD never played the role of a character. What you saw was who he was.
Right.
And at some point, if you do it long enough and well enough, that becomes your calling card. And he had that. He had that going for him. So I am always, like I said, I'm exuberant in my praise for Rob Van Dam. I just think he was a great get for us, but it wasn't an easy get.
Well, we know he's immediately going to be working with some of the top guys: Kane, Undertaker, Chris Jericho, even The Rock. Is Vince responding to the crowd response, or are guys asking to work with him, or how does he get this great spot so early?
Talent.
There you go.
Talent. And he was new. He was unique. He was different. He looked great. He could do things other guys wouldn't try. You know, I know we're all partial and love them, still love the memory of Eddie Guerrero and his 5-star frog splash, but you know, and I'm not knocking Eddie. I loved Eddie. I spent more time with Eddie one-on-one than maybe any talent that I ever did in my career, because he was high maintenance,
right?
Unfortunately. So that 5-star frog splash, Conrad, was a piece of art. Van Dam had this unique ability to strike with his impact on say, for example, a 5-star frog splash that you just don't see. It looked like he was caving the guy's chest in. It's physical. It was snug, but not dangerous. I don't recall anybody coming to me and saying, "Hey, JR, can you talk to RVD? That he's a little stiff." Now, I might have got that, quite frankly, because he was a little bit firm. But it's hard to reprimand somebody unless they're being, dangerous. They're taking too many risks. But to deliver a 5-star frog splash is controllable. One of you's not even moving. You're on the mat waiting. So, but he did work snug. He's a physical guy, and I love that. I truly love that. And some of those older veterans that like you talked about, you mentioned just moments ago, they liked it too.
Right.
He wasn't where his lockup wouldn't break an egg. He was a firm, physical guy, and it translated to television. People could see it, and they could feel it, and they responded.
Just 3 months into the company, he's going to be working a main event in October. It's a pay-per-view main event, working against Steve Austin and Kurt Angle. This is just crazy in hindsight when you think about it. I mean, this company is hotter than they've ever been. Stone Cold Steve Austin is your world champ. Kurt Angle has just had maybe the best debut in wrestling history to this day. My goodness. And all of a sudden, Rob Van Dam is in the mix. You mentioned a minute ago, though, that occasionally you would hear from guys who thought maybe he was a little stiff. Can you talk to us about that?
I heard the same thing about Austin. You know, there's a lot of there were several guys you go back and they just that was their style. It's like using a football analogy. They had rather play smash mouth football and run the ball down your throat as opposed to being, have gimmick plays and smoke and mirror type thing. So I got the same thing from people. Austin, goddamn, Steve's heavy-handed, ain't he? Well, I suffered from that myself on that little angle we did after WrestleMania 17, where he beat the shit out of me. I asked him after the show. I said, "What? Are you pissed at me?" No, why? I thought that worked out real well. I said it did, except the part that you beat the dog shit out of me, and then decided to cut me with a scalpel, which I'd never do again. I was so nervous and scared that I didn't even ask any questions, not one single question. The only thing I suggested was we had to come up with a distraction, and I suggested that Vince come out. And I remember Vince's famous line, "Open him up, open him up." He did. He followed your orders, Chief, and I got it. So, but Austin was the same way. You just look, if the guy's being careless and his carelessness could result in a serious injury, yes, anybody's going to get it. It's going to be addressed. I never had that ongoing conversation because I didn't want to take that wild stallion that out there running wild, running free. I didn't want to put a bit in his mouth. I just wanted to be careful, and simple as that. And he was, for the most part, no doubt about that. But he was physical. Van Dam's a very physical in-ring talent.
After the No Mercy pay-per-view, it's time to wrap up this invasion angle because, well, it's not going according to plan. And Rob is going to be a part of the 10-man elimination match, not a chamber match, at the Survivor Series. And we're going to see the WWF victorious, and that's the end of the alliance. But because Rob is the hardcore champion, he can stay with the company. You've said about Rob Van Dam that it was a huge missed opportunity for the company. Quote, "You shouldn't allow your company to penalize a guy because of some of his social situations, i.e. smoking weed. Who cares? As long as you're not smoking it before your matches and it doesn't affect your performance or put somebody at risk. Rob Van Dam, that was a huge missed opportunity. We would have added at least that youthful feeling and that unique style. We missed the mode on that deal simply because the office didn't have the confidence that RVD was reliable in the sense of, oh, well, he does smoke a little weed. Come on, shit. We missed the boat on that one big time."
There are a lot of guys in that company smoking a little weed. And we say that like it's a sin.
Right.
I'm investing thousands and thousands of dollars in my family's cannabis operation, which I think will be open on. I think our store. What do you call those things? This is the
dispensary.
Dispensary, yeah. I think our dispensary is going to be open in a couple of months as things seem to be progressing well. Boy, there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of legal stuff to get involved in this thing. Thus far, I haven't had any issues, and I won't have any issues. Nothing to hide. So there's a lot worse things that we can do with our lives than smoke pot. I think it's almost wore out. And I think there's so many people getting educated to it, gummies for sleep and things of that nature. There's a lot of good reasons to consume the product, cannabis. So, but I didn't see that as a big issue. Again, it's what I said in that statement. As long as you ain't doing it at work and you're not impaired going into the ring, if he was, and I didn't know about it, and nobody was stooging him off. So I assumed that because he was a quote unquote top guy, if somebody had something on him that they could bury him with, they would have. That's the wrestling business. But he was, but nobody did. And I don't know if that was out of their allegiance to RVD or they're just he wasn't using at work. That's my only. It's going to be one of the two.
Well, listen, let me ask you this. You're running talent relations. So if this is perhaps an issue, And I'm not saying it's an issue for you, but if it's something that you're going out and saying, boy, we missed the boat on this because he smoked a little weed, then you were certainly bumping up against that somewhere. And we assume as fans that that somewhere was Vince McMahon. But we also know that there were other guys who were legendary drinkers. Maybe they didn't have a problem here. And we know there were other guys who would medicate with prescription pain pills that caused a lot more problems than marijuana did.
Bingo.
Was Vince a little old school in his thinking in this era?
I think it came along. The more information that people gather on marijuana, on cannabis in general, the less resistance and pushback you're going to have. Because, the studies have shown how many different ways that utilizing the cannabis in a variety of forms can help somebody with just basic issues. I'm very I'm very for, instead of I used to take Ambien. Ambien is a very strong, dangerous drug. You're supposed to use it part-time or short time. And I did it for years, and it's mind altering. It's a bad thing. I remember one time getting my senses, and I was driving to the Oklahoma City airport to fly to Las Vegas. And I wasn't even booked in Las Vegas. I don't have a clue how I got that thought in my head. I thought, well, I got to make this flight. So it's a bad deal. I got off of it cold turkey. Haven't had one in years and years and years. But it's a horrible thing. So I'd rather somebody toke a little bit as opposed to taking the pills and the Ambiens of the world and things like that, the Xanaxes and things, muscle relaxers, all that stuff. It's not healthy. Marijuana, after you compare it to all those other things, doesn't seem like such a bad thing after all. And I don't even know what the drug policies are in either AEW or WWE in regards to this matter. It's never been an issue in AEW that I'm aware of, and I'm not around the WWE guys to know yay or nay.
Right.
But that somebody's using it, and most of them a lot of them have a good reason as opposed to just being recreational. I want to get a buzz. So it's got its place, but you got to be in the right place for all that to make sense.
Well, we know Rob Van Dam being in a prime spot makes sense. So he's going to get to work with Kurt Angle on SmackDown, and Kurt gets busted open. The Observer would say this: Angle was bleeding even worse than most of RVD's opponent from a kick to the nose. Apparently, there are people really upset about Van Dam backstage and that he's getting over so big with the fans. And the belief is management looks the other way, him constantly hurting people. Undertaker, in particular, spoke up after this match. Listen, I'm sure for a lot of folks, you're just like, yeah. I don't mean that to sound that way, but
yeah,
it kind of is what it is. But when the Undertaker raises his hand, do you really tilt your head and say, okay, well, shit, maybe we should take a look?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Out of respect to the Undertaker, I'm not going to ignore him.
Right.
So and Undertaker would not have any issues with me going to RVD and say, hey, look, you're getting a bad rep on stiffing people. And the latest one to complain was Taker. Taker don't complain about nothing unless it's there, it's real.
Right.
So you got to be more aware of some of the things you do that are marginal. If you just miss it this much, we're cool. But if you're off this much, it's dangerous. So, I don't know how it all worked out, but I don't remember having ongoing issues with it. And then you read a statement somebody had written about, I don't know. It was not as bad as the media and the dirt sheets and all that other stuff would like for it to have been. It wasn't that way. It was addressed. I don't know what the hell am I supposed to do? Make him run a theme?
Right.
Put him in front of a chalkboard, says, I will not potato. I will not potato. Man, that's a new shirt.
Buddy, we got to have an animation of that. I need an animator listening to this to draw us Rob Van Dam like Bart Simpson at the start of The Simpsons. I will not potato. I will not potato. What a great visual. We do know that he winds up working with Taker at Vengeance, and he drops the hardcore title to Taker. I'm sure the internet believes that's punishment. I don't know.
Oh
About
yeah, it's got to be punishment, Conrad. Jesus Christ. It can't just be the fact that they got their small issue put behind them, and Taker did what was best for business, and that was working with RV. Because if Taker not wanted to work with RVD, all you got to do is tell Vince.
right.
And then you get the most powerful weapon in wrestling, the eraser. You get it out of your stash, and you go to work, fix it, change it. So, but I thought those guys had. I was always worried that Rob Van Dam and Taker were not going to have the chemistry that they both would have ideally liked to pull this thing off. And I was wrong on that one. They had a good match.
They did have a good match, and he goes on to win the Intercontinental title from William Regal in the opener at WrestleMania 18. He has a series of matches with Eddie Guerrero over that championship, and he's probably somebody you guys can count on to have an exciting match week in, week out. He's the person who's tapped to put Brock Lesnar over huge at King of the Ring in the tournament finals. And man, talk about a match that was way ahead of its time. Rob goes on to be the Intercontinental Champion, the European Champion, and the Hardcore Champion. He has all those runs throughout 2002. And in fact, he winds up being the final Hardcore and European Champion as those belts are eventually merged with the Intercontinental title. I guess there was an era here where we just had too many doggone belts. Do you think we have too many belts these days?
Yeah, I do. I do. I because when there are so many of them, Conrad, they're hard to manage, and they're hard to make me more because there's so many alike. So in other words, there's a lot of titles. Which one do we prioritize? Which one gets the most the best hugs? So yeah, I think there might be too many titles in general. And a lot of indie promoters have their own title, and they need something to help build their little promotions around. I don't see anything wrong with that. But I think some of the major companies may have a little bit too many championships. Just, and I might be wrong on that deal too. You know, you guys watching may have a different view of this, but I think there might be too many. You got to be able to focus on something and hone in on it. So if you got 6 or 7 titles or whatever it may be, which one do you hone in on? And it can't be done just because they're on TV now. What are you going to do for them later? What are you going to do for them next week? How do you continue to evaluate and to grow your brand with these championships? You know, I think Orange Cassidy's done a great job as the international champion, and I wasn't for that title being created on the surface because I didn't know all the details, and I sure as hell didn't know who was going to be the champ. And boy, Orange has done a great job. He's one of our most underrated performers, in my opinion. He just continues to have great matches, but he's taken it on himself. It's part of the story to he's taken on himself to make that championship mean more, and he's doing a good job with that. So that's the thing you got to have. Is the guy you're putting the title on, is he or she willing to go the extra mile to make their title mean more than it previously meant? That's the key.
We know that eventually Rob Van Dam gets his world title match against Hunter and Unforgiven. Hunter's going to get the win with a little help from Ric Flair. And you would think, hey man, maybe they're going to do something larger with these guys. Maybe Rob Van Dam has an opportunity to be the world champ, which once upon a time, I don't think a lot of people would have predicted, you know, when he was in ECW that his style would work or that Vince would get behind it, but he did. I mean, he's had title matches against Kurt Angle and Steve Austin and now Triple H, all in world title opportunities.
Yeah.
Some of that seems to come to a head in Survivor Series 2002. It's the first ever Elimination Chamber match, and it's most notable maybe for 2 things. Rob Van Dam's frog splash being one of them. Of course, we saw Shawn Michaels debut the doo-doo brown tights that everybody was talking about, but the frog splash onto Hunter, where he inadvertently lands directly on Hunter's throat. This is a really scary situation for
Yeah.
Hunter.
Yeah.
He manages to gut through it, but this is a little more serious than busting a guy's nose. Clearly, it's an accident. I don't think there's any chance that Rob intentionally hurt
Of course
Hunter.
not. God, no. But some will think that, Conrad,
Yes.
because it makes good dirt.
Well, the dirt became, hey, he's going to be de-pushed now because he hurt Hunter. So that's where they're drawing the line. And I would want to argue that, but instead of continuing the singles push where he was just headlining in singles pay-per-views for the world title, now we're going to put him together with Kane as a tag. So we're keeping him on the show, but not nearly the same presentation. Do you think that accidentally hurting Hunter hurt his momentum here?
It might have. Accidentally, it might have. But I don't look. Hunter didn't go crazy on it. It showed you too that, and we can't overlook this. Triple H continued the match,
Yes, he did.
and so that tells me his dedication and his fucking toughness was very prominent. And sometimes I don't think Triple H gets the credit for being as tough as he was, overcoming. He's been injured, significant injuries to quad and all these things. But so I have a lot of respect for Triple H in that respect. To be honest with you, but RVD was that was an accident. And when you ask a guy to be physical, and you ask a guy to use his weaponry, which frog splash is one of those assault weapons, you kind of got to evaluate the risk reward situation. And because we put the pressure on RVD to roll with his game, and look, if Triple H had not wanted to do have a frog splash executed on him, then it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So he felt comfortable enough to have it done. He knew it was going to be a sensational spot, but who in the hell would have thought that just a few inches here or there would cause so much consternation?
Yeah.
But it did, and it should have, and it did.
Well, we know that the tag team with Kane is what's next. He is going to get a shot to wrestle the new champion Shawn Michaels in a disappointing match on Monday Night Raw. And Rob has said in interviews that because of his attitude at the time, he didn't think Hunter and Shawn were big fans of his. Do you remember hearing that or getting that vibe that maybe his, I don't know, loner mentality was hurting him?
Not if, yeah, he had a different personality. He wasn't the most extroverted guy. Something could have occurred in a conversation between those three guys that I'm not privy to, but certainly it would seem that both those guys are smart enough to know that on a good day, on a right day, a match with RVD was money.
Yes.
And guys are going to be more motivated by money or the potential thereof of more money, more specifically. And so I don't think that Shawn or Hunter would pass up the opportunity to work with a top guy who does unique things. I could see a nice long match with Shawn and RVD with all the things that they did offensively being nothing short of spectacular. Unfortunately, that didn't seem like it worked out. And I don't know, there's all kinds of stories. I don't know. I was not privy to having to have a sit down or anything along those lines because of this specific matter. But it could have existed. Again, it could have happened in a private conversation, or somebody may have said something that Hunter and or Shawn said about RVD just to stir the shit. That happens every day.
Rob's next big program is when Kane is going to unmask after a match with Triple H and chokeslam Rob as he's back to being deranged, trying to set Rob on fire and things like that. Kane would eventually defeat Rob at SummerSlam and then again on Raw in a no-holds-barred match. I mean, listen, Bruce says it all the time. You can't be in the main event every time, but
Right.
we are losing some momentum here. And he sort of floats along Monday Night Raw, having good matches, but he's mostly in the mid card, working with folks like Chris Jericho and Christian, but nothing really of note. And it does feel like we've lost some momentum. But then maybe we get a shot in the arm when he gets drafted over to SmackDown. He's going to start teaming with Rey Mysterio, which is a great tag team. But again, we don't really think of Rob as a tag team wrestler. Unfortunately, he blows out his knee. He's going to be on the shelf for a while, and he goes to Vince McMahon and says something like, "Hey, why don't you have an ECW pay-per-view?" And this is right on the heels of the rise and fall of ECW being the best-selling DVD, I believe, in modern WWE history. And supposedly, when you guys hear the idea, you go into it, and here we go. One night stand is a thing. Do you remember that being a Rob Van Dam idea?
Yeah, he was one of the guys that started talking and interested and saw potential, and look, he was on the money. That pay-per-view was made money.
Yeah, it did.
It was a damn success. So yeah, but there were other ECW guys that once they heard the whispers of that RVD and maybe others, maybe Heyman, I don't know, came up with this idea. I thought it was a hell of a good idea. We had the talent. It creates another television show. And, I think where we do that, the Hammerstein Ballroom or something.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's always a great atmosphere. You can't help but have a great atmosphere there. And then we added all the drama with some of the JBLs of the world, the WWE guys being there to stand their ground and so forth. So I thought it was a good idea. Hey, and look, here's the thing. If somebody says, well, they devalued RVD and they, who the fuck are they? But when he hurt Hunter, he got punished, and this is the result of it. When he gets hurt, he has serious knee surgery. And so he can't help us right now. But he did. He helped us with this idea. So if Vince did not respect RVD, then why would he have taken RVD's pay-per-view idea, which is a huge investment, production, rent, all these other things, they pay the talent. Then I don't know what would be. I think he was very much respected. It's just that he wasn't the kind of guy that needed a pulpit to stand in and stand on and preach what he believed to be right. He's just a different breed of cat. He would say his mind, but he was invaluable, Conrad, on this deal, because that was a hell of an idea. And it was a great show.
It was a great show. He's going to cut a great promo out there in front of the entire ECW faithful. Of course, he's injured at the time, but he's doing it on crutches, and fans are just excited to see him.
Right.
But we know that he's going to be really working hard to come back, and he's going to come back better physically than ever before. And maybe you're looking to come back better physically. Well, a lot of that is going to be with your diet. Man, let me recommend Factor. Factor is something that I've been enjoying a lot lately. I can't brag about it enough here. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, and they can help you fuel up fast and get these ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Maybe you're too busy to cook this spring. Well, why not skip all the trips to the grocery store? Skip the chopping, the prepping, and the cleaning up. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. All you got to do is heat and enjoy. And maybe you're trying to count those calories this spring, trying to get that beach body ready. Well, check this out. The Calorie Smart meals are just 50 calories per serving. That's unbelievable. You can also do Calorie Smart or vegan and veggie. You can do keto. You can do protein plus. Whatever you're looking for, whatever your lifestyle, they've got the chefs preparing it. They've got the dietitians approving it. They're all set with 34 plus chef prepared, dietitian approved weekly options. There's always something new to try. Maybe you need some breakfast stuff. They got you covered with egg bites, smoothies, and more. But man, you'll never get in a rut when you got 34 or more options every single week. I actually prefer this over takeout. Not only is it cheaper than takeout and better for you, it's also faster. How in the world can you beat 2 minutes? I've been stocked up with Factor for the last month or so. Last night I had lasagna for supper. It was a Factor meal. Yesterday for lunch, I had Parmesan chicken and some sort of green bean. Man, I don't know what they put on those green beans. They're awesome. They were ready in 2 minutes. And my wife, who wasn't totally sold, She looked it up. She did all the research, and she said, "Hey, this is the real deal." And she's enjoyed a pork chop yesterday herself. Factor has something for everybody. It tastes fantastic. I cannot stress this. I understand that sometimes when we talk about meal kits and meal delivery kits, you think, yeah, but it's not going to be as good as takeout. No, it is. With Factor, you can rest assured this is going to be great. By the way, it's good for the environment too. They're trying to offset 100% of their delivery emissions to your door, and they're using 100% renewable electricity for their production sites. And they even have sustainably sourced seafood in your meals. So feel better about what you're doing for the environment, what you're putting in your body, and what you're saving in your wallet. But most importantly for me, it's faster. 2 minutes. Come on. Head to factormeals.com/JR50. Use the code JR50. You'll get 50% off your first box. That's code JR50 at factormeals.com/JR50, and you'll get 50% off your first box. Factor's the real deal, aren't they, Jim?
Yeah, and they got great packaging. You know, it sounds like an old timer, get off my lawn type deal. But they got great packaging. You never get anything that's leaking
No.
or making a mess. It's all neat, well done. And I like the fact that they make decisions for me as far as what's healthy and what isn't. So, you know, Conrad and I both, as you can tell by looking at our lovely faces, we like to eat.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And we'll travel far and wide to get a good meal.
Yes, sir.
The neat thing about this is that you can do that in your kitchen. You got a microwave, you're in business. And so it's that simple. It just 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes to invest in the next great meal. I'm not stuttering. 2 minutes. So give it a shot. Now's a real good time to try it if you're curious, because you get 50% off your first box, and that's a significant savings.
I love it. And I'll tell you what, my parents, they weren't sold on it. My dad's been trying to work out and do a little better. And he was always falling victim to, well, what am I going to eat at lunch? Because, you know, you're at the office and you got to figure it out. I brought him and my mom a couple of Factor meals. They loved it. They went and signed up. They used our promo code JR50. So they save 50% off their first box. And what's cool is, folks, you can automate this. My stuff shows up every Wednesday now, and I'm all set for the week. And it's way cheaper than you imagine. Go check it out. Factormeals.com/JR50. And be sure to use that promo code JR50. So listen, let's talk about Rob Van Dam. He comes back from this injury at the 2006 Royal Rumble. And ECW's plan to be relaunched here because of the success of One Night Stand. And at WrestleMania 22, he steals the show, man. He wins the Money in the Bank ladder match and announces that he's going to cash it in at One Night Stand. Now, we can beat up and discuss all of was this the right move to relaunch ECW or not? And was it well executed or not? But having Rob Van Dam be the face of that brand makes all the sense in the world. Yeah. And I love him coming back and winning it in a ladder match like this. This just has his fingerprints all over it.
That was good booking, to be honest about it. Let's give the credit where credit is due also. Rob Van Dam did not create his own staging. But you're right. You can't bring a person back that's a star or that you want to be a star and not have an impactful return. Whatever that impactful takes, whatever it means in this specific instance, that's what you got to have impact. And so having a guy come back, you got this sensational background, the ladder match, and WWE has kind of developed its own following, you know, its own brand, its own personality, whatever you want to say. And so, and that was right down his alley. He loved that stuff. So, and he wanted to steal the show. You could tell by his preparation, how hard he worked to rehab his knee and all those things. So, he never let us down in that regard. You know, and if we say, well, the issues with Rob Van Dam were with his personality. Well, what about this, Conrad? What about this? What if it was our personality? What if it was the establishment's personality? And you can ask that question fairly.
Yeah, you can.
So it takes two to tango, as the old worn out cliche goes. And so I I thought it was great booking on how WWE brought him back, and he prevailed in that ladder match. And I thought it was a hell of a ladder match.
It was an incredible ladder match, an incredible performance by Rob Van Dam, and even more incredible is the match he has with John Cena at One Night Stand. This is a hostile environment. It's a great match to go back and watch just because of the quote unquote heat from the crowd. They hate John Cena. I mean, this is really, really well done. There's huge FU Cena chants, same old shit chants, you can't wrestle chants. Just really, really great stuff. But maybe the biggest surprise is that unbelievably, Rob Van Dam wins the WWE Championship.
Yeah.
And the crowd.
Impact, Connie, booking impact.
Yes.
Can you think of, I can't just clarify that, but can you think of any other outcome that would have more significance than what RVD did that night?
No.
I can't. I
No.
can't.
A special moment. You should go back and watch it. We got great stills here on Grilling JR on YouTube.com. Paul Heyman is going to be the guy who actually counts the three. People were maybe expecting the swerve. It didn't happen. Rob Van Dam goes through the crowd, hugs his wife on the balcony. He's the WWE champion. It took him just 5 years to get there. And 2 nights later, on the first ever ECW on Sci-Fi TV show, RVD is awarded the ECW world title. That makes him a dual champion. And man, what a story. It lasts about 3 weeks. He has a title match defeating Edge on the June 25th, 2006 show, which is Vengeance. And a week later, there's a circumstance that the Torch would write about. Sunday night, just after crossing the state border into Ohio, Rob Van Dam with Sabu as his passenger was pulled over by a police officer for speeding. When the officer pulled over Rob Van Dam and Sabu, he smelled marijuana in the car. He then searched the car and found 18 grams of pot, which is just over half an ounce, and 8 Vicodin pills belonging to Rob Van Dam. He also found an unused pipe commonly used for marijuana smoking and several other unidentified prescription pills that belonged to Sabu. Both were cited for drug violations and posted bond on the scene. Both must appear in court in Ironton, Ohio on Thursday morning this week. WWE considered RVD's offense more serious since marijuana is a banned substance, according to the official wellness policy. Therefore, he was suspended for 30 days. A 30-day suspension is also stated punishment for the first positive drug test result. Sabu was fined only $1,000, as it turned out the pills he had were prescribed to him for a diagnosed medical condition, and the pipe was unused with no drug residue. Sabu has had drug addiction issues in the past, so WWE officials feared the worst when they heard what was found with the officer described as drug paraphernalia. At first, Rob Van Dam and Sabu were concerned for their jobs, Sabu especially, since he has so much less tenure and clout with the company. However, McMahon has become a fan of Sabu's style and persona. He felt he was a vital member of the ECW roster, so when the offense was relatively minor, his job was safe. In fact, McMahon approached Sabu after the ECW televised event on Tuesday and told him how he appreciated how he'd been handling the situation since Sunday and looked forward to working with him in the future. Word's gotten around that Sabu was extremely apologetic to his colleagues for what happened, realizing it shed a bad light on the entire locker room, which had a rep for being out of control and drug-riddled during its ECW original prime years. Sabu had gone so far as to offer to take the rap for Rob Van Dam, arguing that Rob Van Dam has things going his way lately, and it would be a shame for both of them to lose their jobs or be heavily punished for the incident. RVD refused the offer, and the police officer likely would have contradicted any attempt to shift all the blame from Rob Van Dam to Sabu. I don't think you're running talent relations in this era, are you?
What year was it?
This would have been 2006.
I think I was.
Tell me how you guys handled this.
Well, we had to get it off the front page, so to speak.
Right.
And I think we handled it fine. I mean, we just followed the policy. Policy was 30-day suspension without pay.
Right.
So and you got to strike. So I don't know how we just followed policy, Connie. I think this is the best way I can explain it to you. It's just that where the policy was, and the talents had agreed to the policy by signing their contract. We just followed the rules.
I just hate this for Rob, man. He had so much momentum. This was such a big time in his life, and now it's going to lead to 2 impromptu title changes because of this suspension and drug citation in Ohio. RVD is going to lose to Edge on Raw and Big Show on ECW. So we got the titles off of him.
Yeah, you had to, Conrad. You had to.
Yes,
you had to. I mean, it went public. It got out there. It made a headline. They had police involvement, all this other shit, and they shouldn't have been speeding. Look, here's the issue. Real simple. If you're not speeding, you ain't gonna get stopped.
Right.
So sometimes you just bring on your own misery by being careless. And these 2 dudes, who I both like, if I'd been sitting in the back seat, I'd have been right there with them.
Right.
I'm just saying that, it just, you got to be careful. Got to be careful. And they weren't. And it was bad timing for Rob. Because, again, I said very early in today's show, part of the pushback at times for RVD was his advocacy of cannabis.
Right.
And that made some people uncomfortable. It's less that way now because cannabis is more, as I said earlier, and I hope this is true, at least for my business sake, that they, people figure out there's things they could do to, you ain't just got to get high. That's not the idea. Anyway, Rob I felt so bad for him.
Yes.
But I was also a little pissed off. So, because how do you allow yourself to get into this position? And it's just, how do you do that after all everybody had done collectively to make his deal in WWE happen? Primarily him, because of his amazing talent. But a lot of us had a dog in that fight. I certainly did.
It's unfortunate, but it feels like this is the beginning of the end for this run for Rob Van Dam. I mean, he reached the mountaintop.
Yep.
Made a mistake, had marijuana in a state where it was illegal, and he was driving above the speed limit. These don't seem like major infractions now, but this was a different time. This was a different era. And
Good point.
Unfortunately, when he comes back, he's just featured on the ECW program, and he's no longer positioned as a top guy in WWE. And at WrestleMania 23 in Detroit, he's paired with Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, and Sandman as the ECW originals, and they defeat the New Breed. And that's going to be RVD's final WrestleMania appearance. His final appearance of this 6-year WWE run is at June 2007's One Night Stand pay-per-view, where some might say he surprisingly defeated Randy Orton in a stretcher match. And as the story goes, Rob was said to be burnt out, needed some time away from performing full time. And I'm curious, were you in any regular communication with Rob towards the end of his run here, or once he decides he needs to take a break?
I mentioned earlier that he was a little extroverted.
Yes.
To some people. He had and if that means he had a small group of friends, then it was, because he had a small, tight circle that he trusted, I guess, the best way of putting it. But you could tell he was getting worn. Look, the challenges that Rob Van Dam has put on his body over his amazing career are extraordinary.
Yes.
You can't roll out of bed every day and feel okay. You just want to get better. And one of the ways that you can get better in this business is just not get in the ring. Let your body heal. And then you can heal mentally and physically. If your body is not aching all the fucking time, then it takes a lot of stress off of you. But if you're in pain constantly, that has to be addressed. You can't sleep, you can't sit up, you can't lay down. It's just hard. It's hard for these cats. It's not an excuse to go out and burn a joint and get high. But if smoking pot at the end of the day, or using it as a sleep aid, a gummy, whatever the case may be, there's an argument to be made that there's a place for that. I'm not advocating you do it or you don't do it. I'm just saying that there are reasons, good reasons, that some people utilize cannabis, and without the sake of just saying, I want to catch a buzz.
Right.
So, but I look, as we've talked about on the show, I worked really hard on getting Rob under contract and working with him and trying to build some trust. I saw Lawler and I made an appearance in New York City a year ago, maybe, and he and his wife, Rob's wife, were there at adjacent tables. We had a great day. It was good reminiscing and shooting the breeze, and I saw how he interacted with the fans. No wonder they like him.
Yes.
He's a good appearance guy. So
Yes.
if you're doing appearances and you want somebody that you're going to get that's got name identity and has got a great personality and likes to meet the people, kind of like me, get a hold of him. He's a great, and he'll sell tickets for you.
No doubt. I've had him at Starcast a few times. Highly recommend it. If you have an opportunity to have Rob Van Dam on your show, do it. If you have an opportunity to meet him at a meet and greet and you're a fan and want an autograph, go do it. You'll have a great interaction. Rob's going to continue to make these one-off appearances with WWE for the next few years. And he even has a 3-year run with TNA. He reaches the mountaintop there, becomes the world champion there. And he comes back to the WWE for one last run from 2013 to 2014. Crowd reactions are always going to be good there, but it winds up being a short run. But it does feel like he doesn't age like the rest of us, man. And in recent years, he's still been waving the banner for the legalization of cannabis, and he's made a tremendous impact there. And he finally gets his spot in the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. What do you think Rob's legacy will be in the wrestling business?
Oh, one of the most underrated superstars of all time. Again, the distraction of marijuana took some people's eye off the fact that this guy is one hell of a wrestler. And I try to think when we were preparing the show, is there a match? Did he shit the bed somewhere along the way in a big match on TV? I couldn't recall one. So I think he's going to always be known as, he can't just be known like today as the 420 guy. He's got to be known for his skills and his ability to have great main event level matches. And look what all he overcame. The perception that he was unreliable and that he couldn't get the job done. He proved all those naysayers wrong in a major way. So he had a hell of a run. And he's just I enjoy talking to him. I enjoy hanging around when I see him. It's fun. And I can see, again, as I said earlier, why the audience has gravitated to him in a variety of arenas for the last several years.
Well, let me go ahead and recommend something for now, and that's Manscaped. You may not know tax season's here in the U.S. You know what that means? It means that Manscaped's here to make sure your paperwork is done and your boys downstairs are having fun. Make sure you spend your tax return money on the important things this year, like family, friends, and ball deodorant. Join the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping when you use our promo code Jim Ross. What a better way to use that tax return money than investing in yourself? Manscaped can cover you head to toe. They've got this brand new Performance Package 4.0. It's the ultimate bundle. The Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is the star of the show. You already know what it does. But now I want to remind you, it's got an LED light and it's waterproof. How about the brand new Weed Whacker 2.0? It's the ultimate ear and nose hair trimmer. They've got a brand new, totally revamped blade and motor. We think it might be the best ear and nose hair trimmer of all time. It's cordless, it's rechargeable, and it too has skin-safe technology, just like that the Lawnmower 4.0 has. I want to mention two other things. The Crop Preserver, which is anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. It's Tony Schiavone's favorite.
How does Tony know it works?
Well, before he started using the ball deodorant, he worked at Starbucks, and he started using the ball deodorant, and his phone rang. Tony Khan put him back on TV. So before and after, folks, stinky balls, drive through. Smell good balls, television star. It is what it is.
I guess so.
The Crop Reviver, the spray-on toner for your balls. Eric Bischoff tells me now his boys don't hit the water anymore. I don't know what that means, but that's what he's telling me.
So what's that mean? Your sack shrinks up, or what is that? I don't get that.
It gets some of the hang out of there. It firms
Oh,
them up.
okay.
You don't need them
There's
flopping around.
There's not as much hang time.
Not as much hang time.
Okay.
The Beard Hedger Pro Kit is the head honcho. You've got everything you need here. Sometimes if you've had a beard shaper before, it comes with like a whole drawer full of guards. You don't have that here. One guard gets you all your different positions. They've got all the wet products you need too. I want to mention though, this is April. April is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. And Manscaped is partnering to bring more awareness to Testicular Cancer Society, to let you know more about testicular cancer and men's health and just early cancer detection. Obviously something that's near and dear to us here on this program. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code Jim Ross at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code Jim Ross at manscaped.com. Don't just get your money back this year. Get your swagger back too with Manscaped.
Good stuff, Connie. Nice. They're so loyal to us.
Yes.
And we to them. And because I guess everybody on the podcast team uses Manscaped.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so
I'd put our podcast crew's balls up against any other podcast crews. They're the neatest, they're the cleanest, they're the meanest. Come on.
Yeah,
Manscaped.com. Use that promo code Jim Ross. Save yourself some cash.
I like the fact that you get the free shipping.
How do you beat that?
That's a good deal, man. That's a good deal. 20% off. So check it out, folks. You'll be glad you did, quite frankly. I know it's a little awkward. We have fun talking about it, but it's a product that works and manufactured by an amazing company. So check out Manscaped and save that money and get free shipping. And manscaped.com. Promo code Jim Ross.
There you go.
That would be me. Thank you.
Joe wants to know, was there ever any serious consideration about getting the rights to his ECW song Walk by Pantera? You know, that's interesting because WWE only licensed real songs rarely, sparingly. We see Tony Khan do it on a pretty regular basis these days. Yeah. Was it ever discussed for Rob Van Dam? Because that was such an iconic part of his ECW.
Not to my knowledge, no. Yeah. It may be in a small group or somebody may have asked a question. Or can we get Jim Johnson to make music that sounds like RVD's original? That type thing. Probably some casual conversation, but nothing seriously.
Fernando Diaz wants to know, Jim, do you have any good chocolate cake stories with Rob Van Dam?
Never had any chocolate cake with Rob. We kept our, we didn't slip off anywhere and have a joint. Now, I'm not going to tell you that if he was in my home, one of my homes, it sounds egocentric as fuck, that I certainly would share one with him. Be happy to. It's got to be in the right environment.
Right.
Or you're just getting high. And if you're not in the mood just to get high, especially if somebody used to work with, then, it might be, you got to consider all those things. So, but no, I've never enjoyed chocolate cake with RVD. Not to say that I won't or I wouldn't.
Instagram Wrestling Historian wants to know, when was the best time for RVD to become world champion before One Night Stand 2006? That's interesting. I guess what he's asking here is, Jim, do you think they could have pulled the trigger in 2002?
Probably could have. I'm a big believer you can make most anything work in wrestling if you got the talent in the ring to execute it.
Right.
Execute your plan. You give them a reason to win a title. You give them a reason to chase. You give everybody the stories have got to have reason. The dots have got to be connected. I thought we did it fine. It got a great pop. It was a surprise. So I'm a big fan of that, Connie. I thought we did a good job on that particular booking. He made an impact. He, meaning Rob Van Dam, made an impact on how he won that match. And I think that has been hard to replicate in that environment, that atmosphere. Perfect for what we did.
Bryant says, Rob was always one of my favorites. Do you think Rob wasn't vocal enough backstage to rise up sooner? Or do you think he was just happy with whatever came his way?
I think he was just happy whatever came his way by and large.
Yeah.
I think as he matured and got a little older, he may have relaxed that philosophy to some degree. Not totally. but to some degree, I got the damn hiccups. So I don't know. What was your question? What was the question again? Because I left a part of it out, I think.
Well, just do you think he wasn't vocal enough, or he
Oh
was
yeah, he could have been more. You got to be your own salesman.
right,
You got to toot your own horn,
right?
and it may be awkward for some people based on their basic personality, and obviously that was the case for Rob. But he did not speak up because he didn't know what to say, or he didn't have a clue. That's just his style. He was laid back, and somebody said, "Oh well, he smoked all that weed. He stayed high all the time." No, he didn't. But that's a good story for you and your dirt sheet. So roll with it. Have fun.
Joey says, if it wasn't for the arrest, do you think RVD would have main evented in WrestleMania in Detroit against John Cena in a rematch? That feels like the natural thing to me, Jim. You know, him being from Michigan and
Yeah.
could have pitched it as the hometown thing, but it would have been babyface versus babyface too. But man, the chemistry and just the crowd and how hot they were for Rob and John at One Night Stand. I would have loved to have seen that on a WrestleMania stage.
Yeah, it'd been fun, but not likely to have ever happen in any world. And you named the reasons. It's a babyface match. There's got to be a special scenario, a situation. The last thing WWE would want to do is put at WrestleMania and have the main event and have Cena get booed like a like a criminal.
Couldn't do that.
No, and it's just I just believe that all main events in WrestleMania or any other big event like All In or whatever, they need to be between a antagonist and a protagonist. There can't be one of each. Two baby faces, in other words, two antagonists. So I don't know. I think that RVD was smart. That was his style, Connie. And we're so used to being around these gregarious, over the top, alpha male type talkers that sometimes we don't take that into consideration. The guy's real personality. He's comfortable being what he is. And the last thing you want to do is make your talent uncomfortable by your demands.
Well, let's tell everybody all about it. We're here. We got to talk about the reason we're here, and that's to celebrate the greatness, the goodness that is jrsbbq.com. I have had so much fun with this all-purpose seasoning. I use it on almost everything. I think you will too. They got the main event mustard. They got the Chipotle ketchup, 2 different types of sauce, and now hot sauce. You guys are doing stuff and innovating every single week. It feels like you have specials or promotions. What's going on this week at jrsbbq.com?
Well, everything's in stock, and we're shipping every day. So if you put an order in at jrsbbq.com, you can you get it shipped in a matter of hours, quite frankly. So something to be considering. We're staffed 24/7. We have a warehouse that's adjacent to my partner's home, and so we're always there. We're always shipping. Order comes in, the last thing you want to do is let it sit. You want to go pack it and ship it, get it out. So that's what we do, and shipping is a really important part of this business. The JR's Red Ass hot sauce is starting to develop its own following, much like the all-purpose seasoning and some other things, mustard, ketchup. It's funny what I thought ketchup sales were soft. Then I look again and they're not soft. They're good. But the JR's Red Ass hot sauce is developing a following. I think it's going to be a babyface, Conrad.
I love it. jrsbbq.com. Check it out. And be sure to check us out on YouTube. Grilling JR on youtube.com is where you need to be. It's fun to listen to the show. It's way more fun to see Jim and see some of the accoutrement with the show. Be sure to follow us on social media as well, because next week we're throwing you the keys to the show. It's hashtag JR. So be sure to ask your questions using hashtag JR at JR Grilling on Twitter and Instagram, Grilling JR over on Facebook. Of course, we got all the merch you could ever need too at grillingjrtees.com. That's grillingjrtees.com. Lots of fun stuff there. And Jim, you've got some fun appearances coming up. I know you're going to be in Charlotte for the gathering August 4th. tmartpromotions.com has all your informations there. And man, we're going to be making the rounds together. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I got 2 or 3 appearances booked. We'll get a little closer to them. I'll get the details out. I know you can find that information on the site here. So, or at least that's what I'm told. Anyway, we'll make sure we promote it. No doubt about that. I just got agreed to do one in New York.
How about that?
Yeah, coming up in a couple of months. Charlotte, and I think there's somewhere I think I got 3 or 4 on the back burner.
Baltimore, New York, man, you're on tour. We'll have more details next week, but next week is going to be fun. We're going to get to cover everything under the sun. Use hashtag AskJR and tune in next week to hear answers to your question.
Right.
Ask it on social media. Be sure to check us out at JR Grilling. I don't know what I expected today, Jim, but today was a lot of fun. I hope we did justice to one of our favorite wrestlers of all time, Mr. Rob Van Dam.
Yep.
And I look forward to hearing you on the call tomorrow night on Rampage.
TNT, baby. Check the local listings for I don't know how our schedule is being affected at times by the NBA playoffs. But check the local listings. Check your guide on your cable or wherever. It's going to be a good show. You're going to like it. And I like the fact that Rampage, Tony Khan is beefing up Rampage. We're getting, you're getting some good stuff there because everybody can't be on Dynamite. You can put everybody on Dynamite, but they got no time to work.
That's right.
You have a bunch of 2 or 3 minute matches. So I'm a big fan of the growth of Rampage and happy to be a part of it.
Check them out tomorrow night on Rampage, and we'll see you next week right here on Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you very much for joining us. Don't forget now, this YouTube thing is big. Don't miss the boat. Jump on with us, and you'll be glad you did. And have a great week.
Hey guys, Tony Schiavone. Need to call a timeout real quick. Wanted to tell your listeners what I've been telling What Happened When listeners for a while now about all the cool things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
Jim Johnston created the soundtrack for generations of WWE fans with some of the most iconic themes in history. Jim sits down with Conrad to take us behind some of those classic themes, including The Ultimate Warrior.
And then I recorded that. And then just over that, you're just doing. It's so simple, but that's what felt like him.
Plus, an all-new edition of The Book is here, as David Crockett takes us page by page, gate by gate, through the JCP booking logs of April 1985.
On Sunday, April 14th, you start the day with a 2 p.m. show in Richmond, Virginia, 43 grand. An hour later, Asheville, North Carolina kicks off, and it's another 63-63. But then that night, you guys all cruise to Atlanta, $31,000 at the gate. Talk about a banner day for Jim Crockett Promotions. This is hard to beat, man.
That's just a small taste of what we got waiting for you. With 4 levels to choose from, see for yourself why ad-free shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now at adfreeshows.com.